Hello, my name is Pooja. Welcome to this episode of Around the World. Lately, Qatar has been hitting the headlines. Be it newspapers or social media, everywhere, Qatar is the talk of the day. And the reason for it? Qatar is the host of the 22nd FIFA Football World Cup. Qatar is being praised lavishly for the investment and astounding arrangements it made for this event. At the same time, Qatar is also in the global news as it has signed the world's longest natural gas supply deal with China. This deal will come into force in 2026 and it will last for 27 years. Under this deal, Qatar will transport 4 million tons of gas annually to China Petroleum and Chemical Corporation from its new North Field East project. As per media reports, this deal is worth $60 billion. China will be the first country that will be supplied gas from the North Field East. According to Qatar, this deal is the longest gas supply deal in the history of the natural gas industry. Now the question arises that why this deal is making headlines? Does this deal have any geopolitical significance? Is this deal a result of some energy competition? We will try to find answers to these questions in today's episode. But first of all, let us know about Qatar. Qatar is a country in Western Asia or the Middle East. It is a small peninsula on the northeast coast of the Arabian Peninsula. It shares its only land border with Saudi Arabia to the south. The rest of its territory is surrounded by the Persian Gulf. The Gulf of Bahrain separates Qatar from Bahrain. Doha is the capital of Qatar. Qatar became a member of the United Nations in December 1971, while it became a member of the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund in 1972. As far as the production of natural gas is concerned, Qatar is the 6th largest producer of natural gas in the world, and it ranks first in terms of natural gas exports. It overtook the US as the world's largest exporter in May 2022. Qatar's total LNG exports reached $11.9 billion in April 2022, compared to $5.8 billion in April 2021. Interestingly, China accounts for most of Qatar's LNG exports, followed by India and Japan. Now a pertinent question arises, why this gas deal is in the global headlines? Notably, China is the largest energy consumer in the world. Recently, China surpassed the US as the largest energy consumer. India is the third largest energy consumer in the world. Secondly, China is dependent on imports for energy security. In such a scenario, China needs a major deal. This deal is not done just to fulfill the energy needs of China. Actually, this deal is the result of energy competition in view of energy security. Now the question arises that why there is energy competition in the world. Actually, ever since Russia invaded Ukraine, there is a lot of uncertainty in the market regarding gas supplies and prices. The demand for natural gas increased significantly after Russia invaded Ukraine. The demand of natural gas has increased a lot, especially in European countries, as Russia supplies more than half of the gas needs of the European countries. However, since the start of the Russia-Ukraine war, gas supplies have been affected adversely. Europe is also working towards reducing dependence on Russian gas. Hence, the role of Gulf countries has increased in meeting the gas needs of Europe. But with a big player like Russia almost out of the market, rising gas prices have raised concerns in all the countries. Hence, China has signed a long-term deal with Qatar to ensure energy security, and the same is making the headlines. However, another significant question is whether this China-Qatar deal is limited only to gas requirement. The answer is no. If experts are to be believed, this deal is a symbol of growing strategic partnership between China and Qatar. The geopolitical orientation and interest of these two countries are focused on Afghanistan, Iran, and the entire West Asia, where regional security is a major challenge. This deal is also being seen as a challenge to US supremacy in West Asia. This challenge is very strong and many arguments can be given in its favor. Firstly, China and Iran share an anti-US strategic outlook. Secondly, when Donald Trump broke the Iran nuclear deal, China refused to side with the US on the question of sanctions. Despite US warnings, China did not stop buying Iranian oil. Now, understand this question from Qatar's point of view. Firstly, Qatar is a maritime neighbor of Iran, and the two countries share the world's largest gas field. Secondly, in 2017, when the big players of the Muslim world, including Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and Egypt, imposed sanctions on Qatar, then all the diplomatic relations with Qatar were severed. Even in those difficult times, Qatar refused to end its relations with Iran. It implies that not only Iran-China relations are cordial from the Chinese side, but the Iran-Qatar relations are cordial, as Qatar and Iran both are close to each other. Therefore, the recently signed deal has provided an incentive for China and Iran to deepen their strategic partnership. Let us try to understand the geostrategic importance of this deal. Actually, both China and Qatar are major players in the geopolitics of Afghanistan. These two countries had opened channels for talks with the Taliban. Qatar hosted a Taliban political office in Doha since 2013, and China was in regular contact with the Taliban through Pakistan. Both countries had advocated talks with the Taliban for peace in Afghanistan. Qatar, like all major players, has been involved in talks with all sides in Afghanistan. At the same time, China also had a diplomatic presence on the soil of Afghanistan when foreign missions were closing their offices and leaving Kabul. Also, it cannot be ignored that China is rapidly increasing its naval presence in the northern Indian Ocean. The Persian Gulf that surrounds Qatar features prominently in Chinese ambitions. China is trying to establish a military base at Khalifa port in the Gulf. However, the UAE has not yet allowed China to establish a military base under US pressure. However, a Chinese military base can be established in the Gulf in near future. Qatar might be the place where China can establish its military base. The historical deal signed between China and Qatar hold much geostrategic importance, but it will be interesting to see when and how much impact will this deal be able to make. That's all in this episode. Let us note down the question based on today's story. China-Qatar gas deal will create a new geostrategic equation in West Asia. Evaluate.